Good evening, and thank you for joining us today as we share with you the LDA Formation and Education Program that we have been so excited about sharing with you. First of all, we want to thank you for your enthusiasm and your support as the LDA moves from strategic pause into vocational belonging, a place where all people of God are formed for the diaconal work of the church. And we especially want to thank those who participated in this process. We are ever grateful for the time and the effort, and as well as those who continue to donate financially, because we can't do this without your financial support. I wanted to share a little bit about what we will be hearing today. Today, we are going to be hearing from two students, current students. We're going to hear about our mission, and we're going to hear about how our mission is being reimagined. And we're going to get a program overview in depth with Deb, and we're going to have a conversation with Amy and myself about the philosophy and the vision. And then we will have opportunity for questions and answers. And Barb will close us with a prayer to just reground us and center us. But before we get started with our program tonight, I wanted to just touch on a few housekeeping matters. First of all, this is a webinar format. So it is through the Zoom program, but it's a little different than what you're normally used to. Many of you may have joined us for Zoom in the past in a different setting. But the way this works tonight is it is set up as a webinar, which simply means that you are here as our guests tonight and you can see and hear us, but your microphone and your cameras are not on. And that's perfectly fine because you don't need to do anything. We want you to just sit back and enjoy and absorb the information that you received today so that you can form questions for us and that we can answer them thoroughly. And speaking of the questions, how do you do that, you may ask? So on your camera, on your screen, you will see three dots that say more. And under that more is a box that says Q&A. Click on that box. And we have Deaconess Karen Davison with us tonight, who will be looking and monitoring those questions. Feel free to ask those questions throughout the program. However, at the end of the program is when Karen will present us with those questions that you have. I also want to say that part of Karen's role tonight is to also keep us on time. We're scheduled for 2 hours, but I know it's a Friday night, it's the weekend. If we don't have to take the whole 2 hours, that's great. But we definitely don't want to go over the 2 hours. So Karen will be monitoring and letting us know when we're close to time. She's also monitoring those questions. So if your question is not answered, if she does not present that question to us tonight, you will still receive your answer. Deb and I will respond to you via email at a later time. But for the sake of time, we won't have time to get through all the questions, obviously. So if you want to take a moment now to find that on your screen, under more, the three little dots, and then it should be a Q&A. Click that. And that is how you're going to be interacting with Karen. So with that said, I also want to review what we are going to be doing today. Um, I will open it up with the student voices, two of our current students, and I'd like to introduce you to our first student, who is Francisco Herrera. And listen to what formation in this program means for him today. And one moment as we get audio for you. And thank you for your patience. It's our first webinar as a community, so we will get that audio momentarily. Thank you.
I'm sorry, hang on one second. The
Mm-hmm.
setting that I need to click is not able to be clicked. So I'm trying something else. So
Mm-hmm.
talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, we will. Adaptability and flexibility, right? That's who we are in a community. And patient. I wanted to also say that tonight you will be joined by a few of our staff members, but on behalf of the entire staff, we welcome you here tonight to hear more about the comprehensive updates of what you all have been anticipating for quite some time. So tonight we have Deb, who is going to be giving you a really in-depth overview of what the new program looks like. Amy will be engaging me in a conversation, um, digging deep into her journalism background, and Barb will wrap up with a prayer, which is part of her really, 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 and you'll hear more about this important role of community care. So that's part of our staff, but we have other staff members who are just participants tonight with you, and they are listening. So we are so glad as an entire staff to have you today with us.
Let's give it another go.
Okay, let's try again.
So my name is Francisco Herrera. I am gracious. I've been around a bit. I'm a classically trained violist and orchestra conductor, and I speak four languages. I've lived in several countries in Europe. I've done a lot of traveling. And in my ministry, I call myself a freelance deacon for Christian agitation and education because so much of the work that I do is about informing people about things that are happening not just in the church, but in the world, and doing my best to do so in a way that it moves other people who claim the name of Jesus to act. And the ways that I've done that over the course of my life are everything from organizing revivals to conferences to fundraising for people to get money to pay for seminary fees for families who have been broken apart by ICE deportations. My piety is in giving myself to my neighbor. That was a major thing that I've been discovering since being in formation in the LDA. That my piety is serving my neighbor. Like that's my worship. That is where I feel that I I meet Christ so powerfully. Um, and what my work with the LDA is helping me to do is to, for the first time in really my entire time as a professed Christian, to really have a community with whom I can discern what those things mean. And it seemed like the one thing that I was really missing was the capacity to work and to do serious formation upon my vocation with a group, with a structured group. What I liked about the new program, as opposed to when I was originally talking, when I first talked with Barb, the thing that she mentioned, it sounded like, like most other discernment programs that you have, right? You have your coursework, you have your field work, and you have your internship. And okay, great, no problem. You do CPE as well. Like, that's very traditional. What has been quite lovely, though, about switching from having field work to having the integrative experiences. So, firstly, that actually worked out quite well for me because I am someone that does a lot of church work. So, in addition to going to my home congregation, Lutheran Memorial over here in Lincoln Square, I also work at a Slovak Zion Lutheran church on the Northwest Side, Trinity. So I'm doing a consultancy role with them. So I have to be there because they're paying me. So it makes it difficult. And then I have to be there for council meetings. I have to be there for certain events. I also sing in the choir because part of time being, the church. So it was difficult for me to coordinate things with my pastor and my congregation because I wasn't there as much. So if I was just focused on basic field work in my congregation, obviously that was going to be a little bit limiting because I literally couldn't be there every week. And sometimes I would only make it once a month. The integrative experiences, however, are significantly more adaptive. So for instance, in April, I went to speak for several days at a synod conference in South Dakota with the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA. Well, I was able to use that for my ministerial leadership experience because I was literally speaking to a 2-day long conference with pastors. And in addition, I met really amazing lay leaders there at this congregation, Trinity Lutheran Church in Yankton, South Dakota. The pastor there, Jeff Otterman, who invited me back in last fall. Absolutely wonderful to work with. And the flexibility of it not being tied to my home parish, obviously, made that easier for me to use. As somebody also who has been very project driven his whole life, right? Now the things that I normally do in my ministry that aren't particularly tied neither to the parish nor to an institutional church are things that I can line up with the integrative experiences. So for instance, I do have one very much parish grounded thing, which is, I think it's community engagement or, something like that. That integrative experience I'm basing on working with the Lenten soup suppers at my home congregation this last Lent, which wonderful time. Absolutely enjoyed it. Wonderful time talking about things with the pastor. But there's also this ecumenical project. And so for this, I'm calling together, again, just my independent streak, I'm calling together an African-American Methodist pastor, very beloved friend of some years named Inger Allen. She's up in Pacific Northwest. She's actually in Jersey. Or is she in Seattle? I think she's in Jersey. A Lutheran deaconess that I know from El Salvador, and a Presbyterian professor who focuses on the environment. So we're going to sit they're going to sit. I'm not actually going to be one speaking. I'm just going to, moderate. But we're going to fix a topic. We want to talk about it. And they're going to look at this specifically from a Wesleyan perspective, a Calvinist perspective, and a Lutheran perspective. So again, this is something I would have done anyway, because I love these kinds of things. But a lot of the things that I normally do in my ministry as a self-starter, as an organizer, as an agitator, line up very well with this sort of independent integrative experiences. And that I've found really pretty wonderful. I've already this was something that was very much a thought of mine, even at the beginning. I am working on putting together a 501c3 specifically as the basis for my church work to understand and, sort of help with the creation of holistically inclusive church culture and called PRISM Initiatives. Well, I have an amazing board of really lovely people who are very deeply invested in the actual process of creating actual holistic inclusive community, not just in its rhetoric, but in the people who are really making these things. And so it seems like, as a capstone project, what a really great way to sit down with the board and say, all right, so I'm the executive director. What does it mean as a deacon for me to be executive director of an organization whose job is to make sure there are as few obstacles to the reception of the people of God into the church as possible?
We are really excited about the gifts, the many, many, many facets that Francisco will bring to our community. And next, you're going to hear from Gabrielle Unzicker, and
Oh my,
she will be telling you about her current ministry and how she has adapted to the new education and formation process.
My name is Gabrielle Unzicker. Currently a deaconess student in my first year of education and formation. And I'm hoping that my ministry can be centered around care for creation. That's been a really important part of my faith journey in the last couple of years, and something that I've really been able to find a lot of faith in, a lot of strength in, and a good community to surround myself with. Whether it's talking about caring for creation, being active in that ministry, and also just really wanting to have that be kind of my lifelong goal. I was a student at Valparaiso University, and I was drawn to the LDA just before my senior year when I was leading a lot of things, different organizations and things at the chapel there. I was helping with morning prayer, with the church sacristy, with a lot of different of those organizations. And I got to meet some of the deaconesses at the start of the year, and they became a really grounding group for me to join my senior year. I went to morning prayers every Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. It was kind of a little Sabbath for me in the middle of the week to join with them in worship. And it was really great. And I got to know them all individually that were there, and then knowing the deaconess community as a whole as well. That was really special. And they were all very inspiring to me, and I really wanted to be a part of that group and see, like, I saw myself in them a lot, and other people in my life also began to see me in the way I was seeing them. So that kind of drew me and pushed me into that, making that decision to join the L. I think this new step for the education and formation program after the pause is really going to be great for the students because it gives us a better chance to be more hands-on with the work that we're doing and with how we are connecting with our mentors, with spiritual directors, with different groups, with the other students as well, and getting everybody in those communities to be able to kind of walk with each other and be able to see each other grow through the process, no matter how long that's going to take. I've gotten already to participate in one of my integrated experiences for ministry leadership. I've gotten to lead a couple of formal presentations at my church. We have an adult forum hour after Sunday services, and I've gotten to lead two of those, talking about care for creation. And a lot of my congregation was really receptive to those and actually kind of inspired my church to start kind of an environmental advocacy movement along with their other community outreach programs, which was really awesome. My name is Gabrielle Unzicker.
Thank you. I am so proud of these two students, and this is just the tip of what the rest of our students offer. We just gave you a taste of it. Um, so I hope that you can hear the excitement and um, the opportunity to belong to something in both of those testimonies. So I wanted to move into our program, What's New and What Hasn't Changed. So our mission hasn't changed. Number one, we are still preparing people for lives of service that are rooted in Christ, grounded thoroughly in Lutheran theology, and expressed through leadership and compassion and witness. If there's nothing else that I want you to take from this, is that this program is not turning this into something that is not recognizable. You will recognize it fully. But why revise? Because the ministry landscape is changing. Our student demographics are changing, and the needs that need to be met are changing. And we'll talk about that a little bit more with my conversation with Amy. And what guided this work? Well, first of all, we were guided by prayer. We were guided through our strategic pause to breathe into the unknown and listen to spirit. And our human guides were you all, our community. We asked for community feedback. And not just our two communities, but we asked for feedback from people who have been supporters, our donors, our board. And we created work groups that were able to, were composed of all of those people. And program evaluations, we sent out evaluations, as well as I mentioned, LDA board collaboration. This is a board approved initiative. And the most important part, I think, is student input. We went back several years and we asked students, what was your experience during the education formation process? And we heard what they said, and we tried to develop something that would feed our future students based on what they said. The foundations that remain intact. Lutheran theology, number one, and all its many expressions, it is the Lutheran theology. Spiritual formation, something that our executive director emeritus introduced us to during her reign, is integral part of being a leader. So spiritual formation is a non-negotiable. Community, you all form these people. And without you, we cannot do it. Mentoring, which is also a part of that community, to walk with our students every step of the way. We've always done that, and we'll continue to do that. And clinical pastoral education, that makes our students and consecrated deaconesses valued in the church. This is something that the church holds high in high regard. And we want to make sure that our students continue to be able to compete in that rigorous study of clinical pastoral education, which we all know is not so much about mercy to the other, but really understanding how you respond in difficult and in suffering. And practical ministry experience. It may be called something different, but it's still the same. And this is something that you heard from our student testimonies today. So what are our four formation domains? We have emerging, developing, and practicing, and integrating. That is what our competency-based growth program will look like going forward. And so now I know that you are really interested in about what that means. And so I'm going to turn this over to Deaconess Deb to talk a little more about each one of those competency components. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Adrienne. So as before, our formation program includes competencies, which form the basis of the knowledge and skills and dispositions needed for ministry. So competencies are, instead of asking only whether a student completed a course or attended an event or wrote a paper, we also ask, how is the student growing? And can they demonstrate what they've learned? And the important thing about competencies is that the goal is not perfection, and the goal is growth over time. So students are not expected to begin formation at that highest level, at that integrating level. Rather, they move through this process of learning and practicing and integrating what they've learned into their ministry and into their daily life. So when we talk about integration, all of the components of the program integrate into this rich and cohesive process. So nothing is done without connection to the other areas of the program. So we use a learning and action and reflection and application model that helps the students put all those pieces together in developing their diaconal identity and that sense of vocational belonging. And all of this is rooted in these 4 formation domains. So we had those 4 before, and they're the same. We're just giving them a little bit different names. So formative spirituality. So again, living that life rooted in Christ, but that also we are being changed in our spiritual growth through formation, the students. Public theology. Interpreting and engaging the world through faith. So what does it mean to have that diaconal lens when you are in a real world situation that requires that personal theology to learning? So that's why that's so essential to be grounded in theology. Of course, life and community, one of the hallmarks of this diaconate, growing and through that shared life and accountability to each other, and ministry leadership and service. So leading and serving with wisdom and integrity. So these domains provide the framework for the growth throughout the student's journey. And that's that grounding and diaconal identity that we hope to cultivate in every student. You heard from Francisco and Gabrielle a little bit about integrative experiences. So the students will do 5 of these. They're short-term experiences which engage ministry in real-world context. And then they reflect on those experiences through that diaconal lens that they are developing. Another example of this, other than the ones that Francisco and Gabrielle shared, is another student, Charlotte Hawkins, created and conducted a learning series at her church on Black History Month. She involved everyone from the octogenarians to the preschoolers. They all participated somehow. So she got feedback then from the participants, how that went, and that's part of that learning. So we do it, we reflect on it, and then we integrate the learning and the feedback as it comes along. Excuse me. So formative spirituality, very, very similar to before. So we're looking for students to create a sustainable and an authentic spiritual life that will carry them through. We all know ministry is not easy in the best of times, but certainly in the worst of times, we need that foundation to fall back on. So students will continue to be in spiritual direction. We teach and we practice different spiritual practices and prayer practices. They will be doing, we always do a retreat type day at the student seminar, and they will also be encouraged to do some retreats outside of that in their own setting. And then one of the things that we're adding that people may or may not be familiar with is the idea of a rule of life. also called a rhythm of life. And that is based in the monastic tradition. And it's not meant to be a hard and fast agenda for your day. Instead, it's meant to be something that you develop and adapt and change through time, that is things that you want to commit to. So maybe it's a regular worship experience every week. Maybe it's a day of Sabbath retreat once a month. It's individualized to the students, and these are things that we're going to do. Begin that at their student seminar this August, and then that will again be tweaked and changed as circumstances permit, and are necessary. Again, as Adrian said, that grounding in theology is so essential. So they will still have their core courses, their theology, a diaconal ministry. So that theological core remains robust, and everyone will complete that common set of learning experiences that provide that grounding. They ensure that everyone shares a common foundation. So for students that may have already have a degree or have done some theological work, we also review that. And if those fulfill the requirements that we need, then they don't have to repeat that work, just as that has always been. Excuse me. And also, as we are getting these students with more real world experience and ministry experience, they're bringing different gifts and vocational interests. So we're adding some electives that provide opportunities for the students to explore topics in greater depth that may relate to their particular context or what they're interested in ministry. So for example, a trauma-aware ministry workshop, or leading through change, dealing with conflict, how to work as part of a team ministry setting. Those kinds of things will be some of the electives that we're looking at. Of course, life and community, that's central part, an important way that students learn and grow and journey together. And that's where you all are our partners with this formation. We don't do it alone. So throughout the program, the students participate in shared experiences with one another and with the broader LDC and CLD communities, which provides encouragement and accountability, diverse perspectives, and lots of opportunities for growth. So you can see there the components of that. Again, not changed. They still do seminars and annual meetings and area conferences and all those things. The other piece, again, that Francisco mentioned is the capstone. And so during the students' final year of formation, they participate in a capstone experience. And this is designed to bring together all the things that the students have been learning throughout their formation journey. They'll work with an advisor as well as the formation staff, and they will develop and carry out a project in their current ministry setting. Now, that may be a church, that may be a nonprofit, that may be environmental center like Gabrielle's talking about. So wherever that is, we will work with the student to develop those projects, those capstone projects. And it draws upon the competencies that they have developed. So throughout the experience, the students will engage in reflection and feedback from their site and with the formation staff. They will document their learning and put together a portfolio of that ministry experience year. And then that will culminate in a presentation and then their interview that they do now with the services and rule with S&R committee. This will be what they are presenting and being interviewed about, because it will demonstrate their whole formation journey and their readiness for consecration. One of the questions that I know I've gotten is, what about the current students? What about students that have already in maybe 2 or 3 years? What happens to them? And you can see the lovely faces there. For the students that are currently in the program, each will have an individualized plan to transition to this new program. All of their past work will be honored. Nothing will need to be repeated. And they will all have very clear guidance on what's expected of them and how the changes affect their formation. Their mentors, that will be part of their role as well, is helping figure out with the formation staff where things fit. But again, nobody will have to duplicate or repeat prior coursework or experiences. And throughout this process, this reimagining process, our goal has not been to become something different. Our goal has been to remain faithful to who we are. At the same time, we know we need to prepare people for ministry in today's world. That mission remains the same, and those theological foundations remain strong, and the commitment to spiritual formation and personal growth remains central. What is changing is our effort to make formation more integrated, more intentional, and more responsive to the realities of ministry today. And now I'll turn it back to Adrienne.
Thank you, Deb. And I'm going to actually turn this over to Amy. Ping pong here.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Amy Smessert, and you probably know me as Director of Donor Experience and Development, but at one time I was a reporter. And so I am looking forward to this conversation with Adrienne after hearing what Deb has talked about. If I hadn't been consecrated just 4 years ago, I might sign up again. It just sounds so good to me. But that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. We're going to talk with Adrienne a little bit about the why behind the why of this reimagined formation and education program. And so I just want to start, Adrienne, with, as listening to Deb talk, I am reminded of one of the constants of the LDA's 107-year history, and that is making adjustments in our ministry of service and response to the needs of God's people. The LDA, as we all know, was birthed in the aftermath of World War I and a global pandemic, the Great Flu of 1918. And when we look at today, there's a lot of similarities in our world today. And then, decades after that, there was a time of profound change in the Lutheran Church in the United States. And that's when our theological touchstone emerged as a testament to the need for the LDA to exist, along with a call to reimagine how the diaconate would exist in a new and very different environment than it had before. So, Adrienne, what I'd like to hear from you is what do you see in the LDA that remains constant, and what do you see as needing to be flexible and adaptable, much like our beloved symbol of a towel? I wonder if you could speak to that.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you bringing in that history of where we've been at the LDA, and in a lot of ways, this is nothing new. We have shape-shifted throughout the centuries, throughout the decades, yes. And so what I see as the same is, number one, is very much a service to this beautiful creation that God has given us, and also to a hurting world, by preparing people in each of those eras that you mentioned, Amy, to protect God's creation, number one, and to respond to suffering and grief, embodying Christ who suffered for the whole world. It's our theology of the cross, essentially. The other thing that I see that is remaining the same is the three goals of 1974. And if you're not familiar with those, I'm going to introduce you to those three goals of 1974. Number one, though, it was to educate and form people for the LDA diaconate. That's what we're doing. That's what we continue to do, and we will not stop. Number two, to teach the whole people of God about their call to diaconia. And just a little, since you started with this history bit, Amy, I'll throw in, this is the why behind the Diaconia in Cristo Awards, is to recognize people who were not consecrated into the diaconate in churches that were doing what God called us to do. And as Munib Yunan, the emeritus bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan in the Holy Land, often said, the church is not the church without the diaconate. And number 3, to care for and to nurture the communities. And we continue to do that. I mentioned that earlier. This is something that we have given Barb the focus of those communities to make sure that our members are being cared and nurtured for and prayed for. And finally, what remains the same is, as Deb said throughout her presentation, we remain unapologetically Lutheran in all of our diverse Lutheran expressions. That has not changed. So adaptability, you ask about. We have to be adaptable like that towel. That's really a part of our identity as the LDA. So we must remain creative and open to how we deliver these evergreens that I just mentioned, or our traditions. And we do this by evaluating. We did that through the pause. We do that by listening to the church and the world, and thereby making our program accessible. And this is something that Francisco mentioned about his ministry, is to make ourselves inclusive without roadblocks to ministry and to community. And so I want to give you an example of what that looks like. What we were running up against was having a consistent is the key, a consistent way of including people who were called to either the diaconate or either to our community and to our program. And I want to lift up one of our current students, Craig Nesson, who is a perfect example of that. Craig Nesson has written several books on the diaconate, just to be clear. If you don't know him, look it up. He is actually, I will call him by his title, the Reverend Dr. Craig Nesson. However, he longed for connection with the diaconate. He longed for connection with the people whom he wrote about in his career at Wartburg Seminary. There was no path for Craig. There was no path for him. And so with this restructured design, we invite and welcome in and create access for folks like Craig. And again, consistent access. We had ways by which we would adapt for people who were already rostered, but we wanted to put something in place that we wouldn't have to reinvent every time someone new came to our doorstep.
Thank you, Adrienne.
You're welcome.
That was really helpful. And I think you actually answered the part of my second question. But the other part of my second question has to do with how our own LDA students inform the process of this reimagined program. And then the other part of that is, so how did our students inform the process, but also how about our LDA values of wisdom, integrity, and courage? What role did those values play in shaping what we've been hearing about tonight?
Yeah, so wisdom, integrity, and courage in our current students, again, just listening to what they needed. A lot of them needed vocational belonging. That's really what they wanted. That is what they craved. And honestly, that's what the church needed. The church needs a place for people to have something that they belong to so that they can be filled up they can be formed, they can be educated, and go back into the world and do the same, do likewise, right? And that's what you see happening with Gabrielle and really all of our students who everybody didn't get a chance to hear from today. But it is using those values to say, what is the wise thing to do now in this context, in this world that we live in today? How do we express integrity in doing that? And part of that integrity is standing solidly in our Lutheran identity. And what is courageous? That's a hard one because sometimes shifts and changes can be uncomfortable. They can be scary. But we still, if we can check those other two boxes, wisdom and integrity, then we can move forward in courage. And I think that's what our students will embody as we send them out into the world, into their vocations, whatever that might be, to do likewise again for those who they are serving.
Thank you, Adrienne. You know, it's interesting, this term of vocational belonging. We have been hearing about that a lot. Many of our listeners tonight will probably remember that it was part of the theme of our recent Phonathon campaign to help support this brand new program. And I wanted to share, too, that for me, it's come up quite organically in some conversations that I've had with a couple of our donors just over the past couple of weeks. And these are donors who are not consecrated and they're not even Lutheran. And they shared with me how the LDA has been that place of belonging in a physical place, you know, being at the center, but as well as a philosophical sense. They felt like they didn't have any other place to go, but they felt a sense of community and acceptance for who they are and how they serve God's people in their particular vocation. So it's something that is, I think, a longing in people's hearts. And so it seems like our program is going to continue to challenge us to help live into what it means to be a place of vocational belonging. It sounds like it's not something that's static. And I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. And so honestly, vocational belonging isn't anything, as you mentioned, that we haven't already been doing at the LDA. These people who you shared with me, how they feel like the LDA is a place that they belong, has been happening. However, we've named it. We've named it. And to name it gives it power and makes it invitational. It invites people in. So it invites people in for even those who are not interested in consecration, but it points people to their own vocations and essentially their own call, wherever they are in the world, as the whole people of God to the diaconia. And I think that's what people see in the LDA. And I'd like to continue to highlight those people who you've had conversations with lately, who are not officially part of our communities or consecrated or rostered, but find the LDA to be a place where they belong, because it's a place where they can look in their own ministries wherever they are, whether it be a librarian or a nun, and they can say, that's an example of diaconia in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you touched on, Adrienne, our LDA vision, which is following Christ, people of God serve across the street and around the world. So could you talk a little bit more about how you understand the new formation and education program to be a model for the diaconate, and maybe even more broadly, you know, we sort of understand the diaconate because we live in it, but what about more broadly for the church? How might our program model what it means to be a place of vocational belonging?
Yeah. So what we've noticed in our opportunity to pause is it also gave us that opportunity to listen and evaluate and hear what's going on around us. And something that has been very, very loud is the seminaries are struggling. Number one, the seminaries are struggling. All of our seminaries across all of our Lutheran expressions are struggling to bring people in, particularly for their MDiv programs. So people aren't signing up to become pastors as they used to. However, there is, I think, in this political climate that we live in, there are an overwhelming amount of people who want to do something. They want to make a difference in the world. So just because people aren't signing up for the MDiv program doesn't mean that there are not faithful people who want to make transformative changes in their context. And so that looks like it's something that the LDA has always offered. Once again, we train people to go out and transform lives, literally, and in all the different shapes of ministries and expressions of ministries. But it's also about expansion and broadening our partnerships. So those struggles that churches are having, they're trying to figure out. So if we can't train MDiv, if people don't want to come for the MDiv to be pastors, how on earth do we train these people? So we're talking about lay people to people who are interested in a formal call to the diaconate. And they are coming, they're trying to reinvent and imagine different ways of how we might put competent, trained people in these positions in the churches, in nonprofits, on the front lines of advocacy. The LDA has that answer. We've always had that answer. And so what I see is us expanding that and broadening our possibilities and our partnerships. A couple of examples of that is our partnership with LSTC, the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. We're working with them to help create a certificate program for people who are interested in diaconal ministry with a diaconal lens. We have just become an affiliate member of an organization called Entrust. It's an ecumenical organization for institutes of higher learning. And so we are now on their list of affiliate members, even though we are not accredited with a lot of the seminaries. We were accepted into this organization as an affiliate member, as one who is doing that work to educate and form people into ministry, into the world. And another example of broadening those partnerships is the potential with the Lutheran Church International. They are very, very much interested and want to continue the conversation about how we might help train their deacons and deaconesses so that they are held at the same standard as their pastors. So these are just a couple of examples of what it means to expand and look at ourselves in a global identity in the world and how we can help the church and be an example of what this looks like. And the really beautiful thing is the revision we needed to do, but once again, we've always been doing this and they just didn't know. So they just need to know that we can do this together and we offer this to the church. And I'd like to end this session with you, Amy, with a quote. You can ask me about this later. How do I have this quote from a professor of agriculture? But I think it fits very well in what it is that the LDA is modeling, as you say, for the church. And it says, agricultural history is a tent, not a tool. The beauty of being inside a tent is that the structure of what binds you together is overhead, not underfoot. Once under its cover, there is nothing to impede people and ideas from getting together. And that's the vision that I'd like us to carry forward. And that is by James C. Gleason, a professor from 2019. Thank you. Thank you for this time, Amy. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Adrienne.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I hope that you can feel the energy and the excitement around this that the staff is feeling and that our students are feeling. But we want to continue to invite you to be a part of this. And if you have the time and the capacity, we'd love to invite you to be mentors to our students. We have several students, 4 in the application process on top of the 9 that pictures that you saw today. So we are going to need mentors, capstone advisors, people who are sitting and looking to see if the students have efficiently integrated their learning experiences with their life and work experiences. And seminar presenters. So, along with these theological courses and the certificates that we're working to partner with seminaries with, we also need presenters to come in and really feel what they're learning in the classroom. So we need real life experts to come in and talk to our students. And it's always, as Amy will say, donors and supporters. We appreciate all that you have given thus far, but continue to join us in this vision and in this mission by your generous giving, and invite others into this as well. So we thank you. We thank you. So now is the time, and we're moving a little ahead of schedule, which is great because we might have a little bit more time for questions and answers. So I'm going to open up the floor for Karen to throw a couple questions at us. What are people asking?
Well, we have a question of, will students still get feedback from the members of the community?
So part of that community piece, yes, is the short answer. The little bit longer answer is they will. So we used to do. Many of you participated in doing DEEC feedback forms for students. So we've tweaked that a little bit in that we are asking the students to do that every year, their information, not just twice. So before it was once before they went on internship and once before consecration. So they're going to do every year. They're going to have a guided conversation. So they will pull together a group of their choosing, or that we will help them choose if they need help, and have some guided conversation and feedback, as well as then in these different integrative experiences and things that they are doing, deaconesses that will participate or maybe part of that congregation or in a different setting, we will get feedback from. We continue to get feedback from the mentors. So there's many of those checkpoints along the way.
Thanks, Deb. Next question is, can you say more about what you mean by vocational belonging?
So vocational belonging is, as a deacon, being a part of the diaconate, I think we've all experienced it. Although in Lutheran tradition, we say there is no hierarchy, we've all sort of run butt up against that. And so to be able to be in communities as well as the LDA as an organization where it is a place that you belong. And once again, I want to highlight that this is nothing new. We've always been that place. However, to name it as such invites people when they see that, they can say, ah, there is a place that I belong. I think that it is, from what I've heard from potential students, it is particularly difficult for men who join the diaconate to have a place where they belong, a place where they can get that feedback, where they can get um, uh, assistance, they can get just some place where people understand them and get them. So that is the overview of what vocational belonging is. And I also feel like as we continue in this and we continue to use this language with people who come in, they'll also define what that means. And so I'm curious about the possibilities of what that definition can really become in the future.
Next question is, what does this program mean for non-ELCA people, ELCA people?
So the program is not designed for one Lutheran tradition or another. The program is still very much catered and designed for our multi-Lutheran identity. And that question might have come if I can be allowed to read into that a little bit. It's because of the potential partnership with LSTC. I want to say that that is not a cutting off of any one of our Lutheran church traditions. It is an option. It is an option. And part of our discussions with LSTC, they completely understand who we are as an LDA community, that we are multi-Lutheran. So it's not the only way. It's not the only way, but this is the one that has bubbled up for now. And we are continually open to other Lutheran traditions and how we might partner with them. As I mentioned, the Lutheran Church International is one that is really ready to move forward with that partnership. And so we continue to be open and look for those partnerships, but never a cutting off, but always an expansion and inclusion.
That's what's posted, Adrian. I don't know if you want to give a few more minutes. Your call.
Yes. So thank you for your questions. And yes, I can send out a copy of the quote. I think it's a good quote, something to meditate on as we look at our future and what we're moving into, as well as what our structures have been and continue to be at the LDA. And so if there are any questions afterwards, I'm always open and available. You can call me, you can send me emails. Deb's also open and available for any details about the program. And also if you want to participate in any of the ways that we offered. So if there are no more questions, I will turn this over to Barb. It looks like Karen's taking one more look.
Yeah, I've got a message here from Deb. I'm just trying to clarify something before we move on.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I think we have a couple questions popping in also into the chat. I'll let Karen catch up.
If a person needs additional education to be rostered, will there be support, as in the past, and assistance in that process?
Deb, you want to take that one?
Sure. Again, short answer is yes. It is my understanding, not being in the ELCA, but from folks that are, that many of the synods are also revising and revamping their candidacy processes and the things that are needed. So Carrie Savola is involved with that. I know in Indiana, Kentucky, and maybe some of you all in your areas. So as that happens, and students come to us, or potential students come to us and say, I'm doing this, but I also want to do that. We continue to work with them and figure out what makes sense on our end. You know, if they're going to do an internship, well, then we'll figure out how to make that a capstone. If they're doing some field work, we'll figure out how to make that integrative experiences. So there's not duplication. Obviously, candidacy will require some other things, and our program will probably require some other things. But we do, we're trying to work really closely with that for people that are seeking that path as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think there was a question about AIMS, diaconal ministers. Can
I
we?
was just getting ready to read that. I don't know if
Okay,
it's what Deb had just said, but I'll read it. And if it
sure.
is, can you elaborate on the differences between the formation plan for AIMS, who are now deacons, former diaconal ministers, which was developed before this, with the new plan for rostered folks that the new plan allows?
Okay, I can take that one, Deb. So that is in reference to the ELCA. They combined the rosters. So the rosters at some point was AIMS, they called them, diaconal ministers and deaconesses. And so they combined the roster. So in the ELCA church body, they are all now deacons. They're all now deacons. It's a little complicated, except for the community of women deaconesses. But they hold both deaconesses and deacon. And so the question is basically, since the ELCA has combined those ministries, anyone who's coming to us who is rostered as a word and service person, it's that one combined ministry, will have a lot of the requirements already met. And so that is a different path that is being set up for people who come to us from the ELCA. They are no longer called diaconal ministers. They are no longer associates in ministry. They are deacons. And so there will be a separate path just for them. So thank you for that.
This is more of I think a statement than a question, but I'll read it out. Candidacy is changing church-wide in the ALCA, looking at competencies.
Yes. Yes, they are. And that's something that Deb mentioned. The Indiana Kentucky Synod is working with that. Carrie Savola is a part of that process. Our Carrie Savola is a part of that process. I just attended the Southeastern Synod Assembly, where they are creating what they call a leadership academy. And so it really points back to the changing needs of our church leadership that I spoke about in our conversation with Amy. Churches are really trying to figure out how to equip leaders at every phase of their ministry. So they're trying to develop these programs. And I'll say it again, it's a program that the LDA has already had. And what we are doing is allowing and engaging and partnering with these synods to say that we are doing this work already. How can we partner with you and move some of your people through our program? So thank you for that. I hope that's helpful. Mm-hmm.
The comment about the aims and so forth, I think
Yes.
the question was, is there had been a transfer process before that was set up. So what is different now? I think you had said that there wasn't necessarily a process for everybody. So what does that look like now,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what it was before? That, I think, was the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, that process, the transfer process, was a lovely process. However, it did not encompass everybody. And that's why I use the example of Craig Nesson just did not fit into that process, did not fit into it. And so it's a broadening of the transfer process. And again, it's a track. It's a track that we can offer to people, but it's expanding that so that we can include more people. Mm-hmm. Thank you for clarifying that, Deb. So if there are no more questions, again, feel free to call or send emails and we will get to your questions if they weren't answered tonight. And I'm going to open the floor to Barb to send us off in prayer.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask if we could all take a deep breath, and if you have any last comments or questions, to go ahead and pop them in the Q&A. And I will wait for a minute to give you time if some of you need a little extra time to formulate thoughts. And then I will gladly close us in prayer when we're ready. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, your love abounds and fills our cups to overflowing. We give you thanks and praise for your love and grace, for making us your own through the waters of holy baptism. And we praise you for calling us through your Spirit to be your servants. We are a living expression of your love. We seek to serve you by the way that we serve others, and we seek to grow closer to you in all that we say and do. We thank you for the time that we've had to pause, to evaluate and learn what our students need to meet the needs of a changing world. Who would have ever thought 107 years ago that we would be meeting remotely together using technology that wasn't even thought of yet? What a gift and a blessing it is, and yet it's still not the same as being able to be together in person. But we thank you for this opportunity that would not exist otherwise. We thank you that you have inspired us to be your people and to look for new and creative ways to serve you and to express the gifts that you've given us in ways that are unique. And yet we are all one in you. We are all one in our faith and service in Christ, and we are one diaconate, and 2 communities that seek to love and serve you fully. We ask that you would bless us and those that we talk to and that we serve with, and mutually seek to know better. We thank you for flexibility and adaptability. We thank you for spiritual growth and formation. We thank you for opportunities to be together. And we ask, with humble gratitude, we ask for you to be with us and to unite us as one in you. In the holy and precious name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Barb. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, particularly the staff, those who are here and present, and those who are not on your screen today. We thank you for all of their gifts that they contribute so that we can do this work, particularly Katie and Sue, who are not present today. So go and live and do good in the world and live out the gospel. Be well, but be aware in wisdom, integrity, and courage. Good night.